like I always knew you as a smart kid, you know,
Thank
like
you.
you're ambitious and everything like that.
Thank you.
But a heavy procrastinator.
Oh,
like
my
I
goodness.
definitely.
He called it. He called it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Podcast. I feel to have deep conversations about life, relationships, God, motivations, and different things we come up with, but more importantly, dropping a few gems along the way. Right now in this series, I'm interviewing one of my mentors, one of my longtime mentors from a good while. My guest today, Gary Homidas. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I do have to say one thing though. Every kid when they're growing up, well, I knew you since, so let me say this, I knew him since elementary. So in elementary, we had this thing called Pathfinders in church. So he's one of our counselors, one of our guide members, one of our kind of mentors for me and everyone included. But I do have to say, as kids, we always, whether they want to admit it or not, we all have like a person we consider like the cool person. Like the cool person we want to look up to, we want to look up, like we want to be like.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but it was you.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
No, for sure. I don't know if it was the car, it was the swag, or both. But it was just that something that kind of look up to. You're like somebody I really did look up to, kind of always pour into, always kind of look for to advice, or even guide me when I didn't even know I needed advice. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's an honor actually. Because, you know, I'm volunteering, and I guess I'll speak for myself. Like, whenever I volunteer, you know, I try to be very authentic, and I like to connect with everybody on an individual basis.
Right.
And not simply, you know, just go in and do whatever I am volunteering for. So it is a, you know, a blessing, you know, and an honor really to know that I had that impact on you.
How old are you when you're in I think it was 3rd grade? I think when I turned 10, or maybe 4th grade. 4th grade is a 9, right?
Yeah. So you might have been, at 10 years old, you might have been in 5th grade.
I might have been in 5th grade.
Yeah.
I think that was more plausible. That's more what happened.
Yeah.
So from 10 years old to 22, right?
Yeah.
Do you see the same person you see now? Or what did you see back then? You don't.
Like, I think, how can I say?
I mean, I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't a wildly bad kid.
Right.
Unless you think so.
Nah, definitely not. Like, you still have some characteristics, because, you know, like, I always knew you as a smart kid, you know, you're ambitious and everything like that.
Thank you.
But a heavy procrastinator.
Oh,
like, I definitely.
He called it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I remember that about you. So I would say, you know, like, well, for one thing, I'm very proud of you. And I do think, like, all the great qualities that I saw in you, even as a kid, like, you still possess that very driven. You know, you have this podcast going. You know, you have like you have a goal in mind for your life, obtainable, measurable goals. So, yeah, man, like, I'm not surprised by this, but it's, you know, I love seeing it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I always think about like right now I've been thinking about like people who've poured into me, people who've like, you know, stuck their neck out for me, people who've like saw the best in me, even when I didn't even know to, even like if it's a young kid, teachers, mentors, counselors, aunts, uncles, parents, different things. Like, I'm always thinking about like sometimes what is the catalyst, or what's that thing that tells you, hey, let me try to give as much to this person as possible.
So that's a great question, actually. So I think for you, I'm answering this and I'm thinking about you, and I'm also thinking about some of the other kids that were in the group. And as a mentor,
shout out to them, by the way. Shout out to you.
Shout out to Zion Silverhawk.
No, we gotta say this. That is by far the best squad name we've had. Like, throughout the whole D5, I don't care who you are. We had the best name. That just had some swag to it.
For sure, I love that.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, so as a, you know, mentor, volunteer, whatever, when you're working with youth, you notice like some kids who have like great qualities and they just need like that extra little push. You have some kids, like, you notice some kids who maybe a little more shy than others, and you kind of have to give them maybe a little extra time, like, or devote extra time to them to help get them out of their shell. For you, you were definitely, again, like, you were that ambitious kid, but procrastinator. Yeah, because I remember, like, if we're talking about Pathfinder, we have like curriculums that we needed to complete, you know,
like,
books.
Like mini assignments that to kind of like help you develop some skills, some like backpacking, some, you know, different things as well.
Right. So, and you used to drag your feet with completing the books, right? And I remember having to tell you over and over again, like, come on, man, just do the work, do the work. And then it'll be like maybe a month or two before it's time for the I forgot what it's called, the review.
Inspection things.
And you would finish everything, like, and sometimes it'll be like 2 books, and so like for a good amount of time you don't do anything or whatever, and it's like, come on. Or you would work like snail pace, you know, and then like right before the review you finish everything so thorough, you get high scores, and it's just like, I wish you did this several months ago so I didn't have to talk about it.
You don't know how true that is. I have two places I want to go with this. Because I do see that, and for a short time I thought I was like more kind of obsessed or even kind of addicted to that feeling of procrastination. Like, do you ever think that's something people can have, like you slow down, but like you feel more accomplished, or like that rush feeling of like getting in, like just when the door closes. Like sometimes I even like that feeling. Of like getting it in at the last moment. So sometimes I can see myself like, I know I can do it later, then I feel so accomplished in a way. Do you think that happened? That's
definitely a real feeling, because I myself am also a procrastinator, and I think anyone that knows me picks up on that as well. And so I took this graduate course, organizational behavior, and the professor talked about it actually. Like, some people thrive on feeling that pressure, and so they kind of create that pressure for themselves, where they push things off.
That is true.
You know, push it off to the last minute and then come through clutch. You know, so it is, and honestly, some procrastinators, if they set out to do the work early enough, it sometimes isn't their best work, or they're not the most time efficient or anything, because they have so much time in front of them.
That's definitely something I've learned about in college. Like, college, I think it's one of those things that like stretches you to your core and kind of reveals the things that you kind of have to improve on, or things that like their base level things that you really care about. Like for me, I know in college, like, well, still in college, but some assignments, like, I try to get them in. I try to like be active with it, but like when it comes to the end of the last 2 weeks, somehow I'm getting all of those assignments in. If I could get one of my professors to come on here and talk about that, for sure. I know a professor who has that, like, who knows that's me, unfortunately. But you said something. You said I was ambitious and driven, but also procrastinator. Do you think those two can exist at the same time?
Yeah, definitely.
Really?
Yeah. So, and this is not advocating for procrastinating. Like, if you're not a procrastinator, continue with that skill. But
don't join us. Do not join this club.
It's hard. It's hard to be a procrastinator and get things done. But I do think those things go hand in hand. Cause, and I guess I would be speaking from personal, and you'll let me know if that reflects for you as well. So even though I'm not physically putting things into action as a procrastinator, I'm always thinking about it. So it's in my mind the entire time, and it's like I envision completing said tasks. So it's like, you know, people do vision boards and they know where they want to go. For me, it all happens up here. And then
you're saying it exactly, because it's like you completed the assignment, you did everything in life. You know, all in your head is just like in real life, it's just going slower.
And then until it's that crunch time, and then, you know, I put in that work. But that also has created like sleepless nights and things like that. So, you know,
it's interesting. It's really interesting with procrastination. It's like you want to do it And sometimes you don't even realize that you're procrastinating. You're like, yeah, I'm doing it. Or sometimes you even feel like you're being productive.
Yeah.
But really, you kind of have to check yourself out of it.
For sure.
Do you think you have to like sometimes train yourselves out of procrastinating?
Yeah, I think it is vital. Because I know, like, again, personally, there were times where I procrastinated a little too hard. And then I couldn't put my best foot forward, right? Like, say in school, right? Allowing final papers or final projects to linger a little longer than it should have.
Yeah.
And now I'm racing to just complete it versus racing to do my best work. And so I think that's where, even if you are a procrastinator, which may not necessarily be a bad thing, but there's always room for improvement, like, mapping things out a little earlier.
I struggle with that, with mapping things out. Like, I'd want to, or I'd map it out, but then after I'd be like, okay, I'm at the start, I still have time. I'm at the start, I still have time. Then it's like 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna try to post a screenshot maybe, but I remember I did like I did 3 assignments and the final assignments on the last day. And I got it in, like, the library was closing at about 5 p.m. I finished it at like 4:58.
Yeah.
And man, like, it's like I already had it in my head. Like, I thought I was like planning it out, but really I was procrastinating.
Yeah.
It's something to get over, but it's like sometimes you realize you're kind of that clutch person sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a benefit to procrastination?
Definitely, because when you're a procrastinator, you use your creative side of your brain more.
Yeah.
Because you have to think of, like, and problem solving. So you're thinking of, you're being creative on, like, you know what goal needs to be obtained.
Yeah.
Right. And you're saying, okay, how can I do this efficiently and on time? Like you said, where you're working down to the final wire to submit things.
Yeah.
And I've done it as well. Like, even in grad school, like, there's been numerous times where I'm submitting work that's due at midnight and I'm submitting it at 11:57.
I love 11:58. I love 58. That's my time for everything. Yeah. I remember one teacher, she switched it from 11:59 to 10 p.m. I have never struggled so much in that class.
Yeah.
That teacher, you got me. I'm not gonna lie, you got me for sure.
Yeah, but there's definitely benefits to it for sure. Like, it pushes you to be that problem solver. And I think, like, if any of you are, working in business or anything like that, that also, like, you do feel that pressure at times, like, say, to perform, like, right on the spot, like if a unknown situation or comes up for whatever reason, or even as photographer, or if you're working where you're scheduling people or something like that, like, being able to have, like, those gut reactions, quick reactions, thinking quick on your feet. Like, I think that's stuff that procrastinators kind of build because they created that pressure on themselves, limiting the amount of time they have to complete something.
I've noticed that even with me, because, like, sometimes I'd have, like, a last minute presentation, or a teacher would be like, randomly, hey, we're going to present this next week. And then I'd already, like, okay, yeah, next week I got it. Then I get up there and just kind of build that kind of skill of being on the fly.
Yeah.
Do you ever think, like if somebody drops something on you, like, you used to procrastinate, somebody just drops something on you, you're able to, like, come up with something right then and there?
Am I able to? Yeah, there's been quite a few times where we had to think on the fly, especially, like, say, going back to...
Yeah, we were thinking on the fly a lot. Like, sometimes we'd have trips, like, what we're going to eat tonight, where we're going to sleep, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's like...
Yeah, or, sometimes, and even when we plan things, the logistics may not work out as smoothly as we thought, and we had to, like, think on our feet to make a way. So, I've experienced several times where I had to think.
We've had some wild times. We've had some really good times. The fair,
zoo,
Camp Hawthorne, many times. Sometimes we're not gonna talk about, but definitely There's some good times, but do you find it, I wouldn't say rewarding, but do you feel like it's worth it pouring into other kids? Or pouring into people who are young, not even younger than you, but people who are like, I wouldn't say disadvantaged, but people who may need the help, who may not even know they need the help. Like as kids, we thought, of course we think we know everything.
Right.
We think like, hey, we got it, or whatsoever, this is going to be a piece of cake. Or it's like, hey, what is this even worth my time? Because I can imagine, like, it's tough dealing with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially if they're not even yours.
Yeah, yeah.
I've learned that a little bit. When kids are not yours, you have no relation to us, like, everything is just multiplied by that. Do you think it's still worth it to, like, help those?
I think it takes a, so there's, do I think it's worth it? Short answer, yes. Mm-hmm. But I do think it boils down to that mentor's personality, like their temperament. Because some people have that temperament where they could work and help, shape and mold and someone else, right? Mm-hmm. And pour into them. Other people don't have that temperament. Like some people just kind of rather to work on themselves, right? And so I would say for those individuals that rather work on themselves, nothing wrong with that, by the way, but for those who don't have that heart to work with youth or younger people, I would say it wouldn't be worth it for them, and they shouldn't force themselves to do it, because now they're forcing themselves to operate in something that isn't what is kind of native to them. And I'm gonna unpack that because I don't want to discourage anyone from stepping outside of their comfort zone. But so you've been to visited different churches. Have you ever seen like the greeters at the door who's supposed to be the most welcoming and friendly? Yeah, for sure. Often feel like the meanest ones that you run into at the church, or makes you want to not even visit the church anymore. Yeah, for sure. So that's individuals who are like operating outside of like their personality. You know what I'm saying?
I get you.
So for people who do have that heart where they can pour into people, I would say it's definitely worth it. And I can speak for, again, myself. Initially, like early onset with Pathfinders, I wasn't into it at all. Yeah, like even when I was a staff and things like that, like, because, people at the church try to get me into it. Yeah? Yeah. I would go because I had said I'll do it. and this was like in my 20s. Yeah, and I wouldn't go. But over the years, like working with more and more young people, because I volunteered at the at an elementary school in Tennessee. Yeah, so I was an in-class volunteer, so I would help them, students who struggled with their work and things like that. I would help them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it started to kind of make sense and shape me more. But I was already a people's person, but I wasn't pouring into youth. And so that experience, when I came back home and became more of a staff and became more involved, like you guys got the benefit of me,
of kind of developing that people skill.
Exactly. And I always try to connect with like if I'm working with a youth, I always try to connect again on an individual level, because then it makes the work more meaningful, and I could feel okay going above and beyond what is required to make sure that, okay, like you may have a need that Pathfinder B doesn't have. Right? But I'm willing, like I'm in a position to pour into both of you guys in the way that you need, because I know you on a personal level. So, and it is rewarding because it helps me grow too. Like I've discovered through working with you all, because there was countless times where I wanted to quit. Countless times where I wanted to quit. I can imagine. But working with you all, it helped grow me as well. And it helped me discover that was actually a passion. And I didn't know that before working with you.
Do you think some people like kind of have to get into it softly, even if that's not their personality trait? They may not know that's not their personality trait. They may get into like something just softly, just to see, hey, what's this like, or how do I respond in this situation?
In terms of volunteering?
Yeah. Volunteering, being a teacher, or just seeing somebody that you could just mentor, or just hang out with, like, hey, how's it going? What's going on with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always a way to volunteer. Volunteer in a space that works for you. Like say, talking about church, right?
Right.
So if I'm not a singer, like if I want to give my talents to the church, but I'm not a singer, right? So it probably wouldn't be a good idea to join a choir.
Yeah.
Right? Even if I can sing, I just don't enjoy it. It won't be, it won't be maybe much of a ministry on my part because my heart isn't in it.
Right.
But if I love technology and I join the technology department,
yeah, I would be suiting
right,
or going into learning something that could possibly benefit you.
Right. So to benefit me, it's something I'm interested in. So I'm going to be like it'll reflect more, like as I'm dealing with other people as well. So I think there's always room for people to mentor and volunteer in different capacities. But I would always say when you are doing that, just do it in a capacity where, or at least, like you said, right, start off lightly. So do it in a capacity where it's something that you're already interested in and that you could sustain. Like that's not going to wear you down, make you hate yourself for even volunteering, and grow from there.
I get you. Because sometimes, like I bring these things up because sometimes I realize how much you may not know you're off the you avoided the wrong path just because you followed somebody or somebody helped put you in a different direction. Yeah. Like even like I talked to many people like through college. I've met so many people through like church and different things. I've met so many people who kind of showed me that I was never too far off from the wrong path in life. I'm never too far off from something that hey you maybe not should have been doing. Yeah. But I remember the thinking that I have. Maybe Gary thought like that, or maybe somebody else thought like that, and that maybe poured into me. I maybe like kind of sowed a seed that I can more kind of capitalize on more. Yeah. Do you ever see that with kids that you kind of mentored in the past?
Like see that they're not too far off from
not too off, but like see how what you did before kind of putting them in a better path.
Not on a deep level, maybe photography, like creating that interest. I mean, if you didn't say what you just said now, I wouldn't even have don't. So I'm grateful to know. But the only thing I would say, I would say when we did the photography on there.
Yeah.
It was at the zoo.
We went to the zoo and we took that. That might have been my first photograph with a real camera.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, this looks so awesome.
Yeah, man.
That was like 5th grade. I didn't even know about photography.
Yeah, and it sparked an interest. So, and it didn't only spark an interest in you. Some of the other Pathfinders as well. Yeah. It sparked an interest. So that was one of the things where I wow, that that felt rewarding to see. All you guys were so tiny. The cameras were pretty big.
I didn't have this good back then.
So yeah, that was really rewarding. And then seeing what you're doing now with that skill that you learned in the club, that's a great feeling.
Yeah, I mean, man, I'm young now. I'm only 22, but I can't even imagine stuff that I may tell somebody now, how it might help them. I have a quote that says, "Your maturity will have more of an impact than you would ever know." Right? So it's you being mature in a situation, you doing something simply as just being yourself, or just avoiding confrontation, or maybe confronting somebody who needed to be confronted. Yeah. That maturity may speak more to other people than you ever know.
For sure.
I remember my dad told me one time, he said, "You'll never know how many people are actually praying for you." Yeah. And even on the inverse side, it's you ever know what impact you could have on other people. Do you ever see that with your life?
I never know what impact I could have on other people. I would say, yeah. I mean, there's some I have some friends that tell me some positive impacts I've had on them, which I never even realized, because for me it's I'm just trying to...
You're just doing you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, really when they bring it to my attention, or there's certain things that I do that's just based on my own goals, right? And then a friend will tell me man, it wasn't until you started doing this that had me thinking about, man, maybe I should do X, Y, and Z.
I guess you.
And also, I mean, of course, there's also the other part where you have negative impact on people and you don't realize that you did. And sometimes you won't know unless someone says something. So yeah. So it's and I've had some people that told me that as well, and then it's just being accountable, apologizing and trying to do better.
That accountability is a hard step to get through.
Yeah.
For some people, myself included, for sure.
Yeah.
It's kind of looking back on yourself. It's always something, like you try not to be too introspective, but you try to understand, okay, am I going in the right direction? Have I done more, or have I done actual good in like the world we're in and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Do you ever like get into deep conversations with people and they I remember, weirdly enough, I remember one person from my mom's church or something like that. He told me that, walked up to me randomly when I visited back. He said, I've seen you from afar and I've seen that you've been doing a lot of good and you're on the right path. Keep it up. And I don't know how, maybe Holy Spirit or something like that, but it's like, in that moment I was feeling bad for different things, but that kind of reassured that I've been doing good.
Yeah.
Have you had that moment with people tell you like, hey, you're doing good so far, and that really helps you more than you think?
Yeah. I can't remember if it was like late 20s or early 30s. Kind of like what you were saying, like, you know, you have your own internal thing going on. And like, cause for me, I do evaluate and reevaluate my life a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't live in my head.
I do. I live right here, 24/7.
I don't live in my head, but I do like to do self-inventory often. And so I know that was like a period where I was pretty like down on myself and stuff like that. And then, and then somebody, told me, saying like kind things about me and things like that. And it was kind of a reminder, right? Because I think, as people, sometimes we do get down on ourselves. Like, the saying, we are our toughest critics.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you saw a friend that was down on themselves, you would know all the positive things to say to them. But then when you're down on yourself, sometimes you tend to beat down on yourself even more. Right? And so, yeah, like I've had that experience, like I think late 20s or early 30s where something like that has happened. And it did change perspective. It's like, okay, stop being so hard on yourself, you're good. Just do better. You know what I'm saying?
I got you. So, I'm 22, right? So, 22-year-old Gary. I don't want to. It's not that long. You're not that old. I don't want to carbon date you or just put your age out there. But 22-year-old Gary.
Yeah.
I don't want to say what are you telling him, but what do you think he should know that might help him? Before you answer, let's go to commercial real quick, and we'll get right back to his answer.
I feel like when it comes to you pouring into other people, it's important to have that community who's like most definitely there on goal, willing to pour back into you, for sure. And that keeps you going. That keeps you motivated. Keeps you fresh. It keeps you on your toes.
For sure, we need examples of good men in our lives, because I think something we talked about earlier, people who are moving, or men who are moving in spaces and they're arrogant or they're like really obnoxious or really just like forcefully bulldozing their way into these different spaces. I think it comes from a place of not having people to look up to, or the people who they did look up to gave them wrong examples of like manhood is something that you take. It's about strength. It's about just being a brute or being like forceful about it, and they internalize that. So I think it's a large part of what's going to determine your outlook or your perception of manhood are the people around you. So I think I'm definitely grateful, I think you are too, for having the people around us, especially within the church and other people who are able to give us those really cool examples of like being manhood, and like not even directly relating to us or directly talking to us, but we just saw the way they moved and we knew that we wanted to move the same way they were moving.
You're back. So, 22-year-old Gary, right? What are you telling him that you think he needs to know that I'll even put a spin on it. Something he may not be ready to maybe accept, or even kind of like, something he needs to know, but he's like, even if you tell him this, you wouldn't even agree with yourself. Like, I hear that question, I changed it to question.
You made it harder.
I did. Because a lot of people say, go back to your old self. But honestly, when you go back to your old self, you probably wouldn't have listened. Like, I know I wouldn't have sometimes.
Yeah.
But what's something that you think you would have needed that you may not have been ready to admit?
Something that I needed, but I wouldn't have been ready to admit. I don't know, man.
You're pretty awesome.
No. I don't know. Well, but see, I guess it's hard to go that far back. I do make myself sound really old. I'm not as old as I am. No, I'm just kidding. No, like to get into them. I guess I don't necessarily remember my mind frame as much, because I know, like I always, I tell people, even though I make plans or even though I have certain thoughts, I try to leave room for God to work.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to think if there was anything anyone could say to me that would make me not accept or not admit. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. You brought up an interesting point, and I think you may be able to challenge me on this. You said trust in God with it, right?
Like I like to leave God some room to work. Yeah.
Some room, right? For me, it's like sometimes I struggle with. It's not. I don't even think it's simply trusting God, but it's more like, do I trust myself enough with maybe what God has, right? Or do I trust myself enough to complete that plan that God, or to listen? Because I'm like, I may have to drive the car, right? And then I'm like thinking of the road systems. Okay, what time? Trying to figure out what perfect time to do it. Now, let me make sure I brush up on like parking and different things, kind of that. I'm trying to stress myself just for the opportunity. Do you think that falls in? Do you think that's a good mindset to have?
Is it so like not trusting yourself to do what God
Yeah, so it's
has kind of put on your heart that you need to do?
Yeah, or even the podcast. Like sometimes, like even before this, like honesty moment. I was supposed to start the podcast in 2020.
Okay.
I started in 2022. That took so long, not because I wasn't ready, but I was like, I need to get ready to get ready. Do you think that's an issue, or do you think that is an issue?
Definitely, because I think it pushes you back, and I'm saying definitely like that because I'm the same way. There's something like I had so many different like say business ideas, invention ideas that's like been stewing in my mind for years, right? And I'm still trying to force myself to do some of those things, right? And it really just, I think it pushes back the timeline for where you could be great at whatever it is that you setting out to do, or whatever that God puts on your heart to do. Because there's some things, like if you think of like say those Bible stories, like was it Jonah? Yeah, Jonah, right?
Got swallowed by a fish. What fish did he
like
get swallowed by? But keep going.
A big fish. But it's like he's running away from whatever God designed for him to do, and really, they always say you can't outrun God, right? Whatever God's will is for your life, it's gonna happen, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Right? And also, I guess the comforting part of that is just, it's not necessarily you trusting yourself, but just trusting that God won't put more on you than you can bear, right?
Yeah.
Like He's not gonna put anything on you that you can't handle. And so I think that we need to like rely more on that, like trusting. Okay, well, if God's putting this on my heart, and I know this is where I'm supposed to go,
right?
Just go. Cause like Moses wasn't, he stuttered, right? He wasn't a public speaker, right? But God was calling him to be that, right? Standing up in front of Pharaoh, standing up to lead the people.
Yeah.
And so Moses doubted himself, but he trusted God enough to walk down that path eventually, right? And so I think that's, anyone who has that doubt, self-doubt, like we do, I think it's just, even if you don't trust yourself, fine, but just trust in God that, okay, let me just take these steps like you're doing now.
Yeah.
You delayed it, but you're doing it, right? And you know, I'm mad confident it's gonna work out for you for sure.
Thank you. So I must ask this question.
Yeah.
How have you evolved as a as a man?
How have I evolved as a man?
Tough question, but it's just
Yeah.
you see some mindsets you have like back when you were younger, like you think, okay, this is the end all be all of being a man. This is how you do be a man and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that self now?
I think one way I've evolved is not thinking I have the answers to everything, right? And practicing empathy more, like putting yourself in other people's shoe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if they're expressing a perspective, even if I don't agree with it, you know, it just because I don't agree with it doesn't make it less important to someone else.
Just because you don't agree with it doesn't
whatever perspective that they're offering, or whatever idea or
right.
emotion that someone's expressing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think, well, that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make it less important.
Right.
So it's I think you know, working on empathy, understanding that there's more to learn about not only being a man, but just like I guess evolving as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that's a state of, and self-awareness. Self-awareness has been I think a key thing. What else? Sorry, I shouldn't make sounds like that.
It's alright.
Yeah, I think that was one of the big things that I wanted to focus on as an area of growth for me.
I see. I think with being a man, it's like sometimes
My bad. And acceptance.
acceptance. There you go.
Acceptance, yeah.
Acceptance is a real one because
Yeah.
sometimes you struggle to accept things. It's like you're holding something, right, and you're walking with it, and then you drop some things along the way,
Mm-hmm.
and then like struggling with acceptance for me has been like trying to pick up those pieces
Mm-hmm.
as I'm like walking, as I keep walking. Like, hey, let me keep walking while trying to catch these pieces, juggle them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But accepting some things are gonna fall,
Mm-hmm.
and some more things are gonna come. Do you think that was a journey that you have to go through?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like, cause there's times where you could want something, and it's not working. You know, it doesn't work out for you. You know, and I know for me, like, whatever, like, say I want, and my mind is fixated on it, I try to do my darndest to make that happen, right?
We guys, we have a trouble like letting things go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and so sometimes you just have to accept that whatever it is that you had in mind for yourself may not be it for you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be romantic relationships. Honestly, it could be goals, right? Because again, if you're trying to, and this is how I guess reason it in my mind. If you're trying to allow God room to work,
Mm-hmm.
right? He may want to bring you this way, and your brain is fixated here.
That's for sure.
Right. So you know, like I try to keep that in mind, and again, and when there are marks that I want and I don't hit those marks, I can't move forward if I'm still trying to hang on to what has already passed. So it's just accepting that it isn't what it is anymore. And then saying, okay, how can I move forward? How can I evolve? How can I grow, right? And do better.
Yeah.
You know. So.
And even sometimes I feel like acceptance when it comes to not just L's but wins as well.
Yeah.
Like I had another quote that said, if you hold up a trophy long enough, it'll become a burden. So sometimes I realize like I'll hang on to some things that I've worked in the past, or even some guys, like we'll hang on to some things that worked in the past, some wins that we had in the past, so long that we focus on it so much we don't move forward. Like we sometimes live in the past, even if it's losses or wins too.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something that you have to grow through as well?
Hang on to losses, definitely. I don't know if I hung on to wins. Because I think I actually had to, that's another part of evolving. So I had to learn to celebrate my wins. Because there are times, like, you know, goal setting, whatever it was, when I reach it, it's like, oh, I'm here. All right, what's the next thing? You know, and sometimes it's rewarding to just take a moment to just bask in that, oh yeah, I did this, right?
Wow.
So yeah, but I think it is equally important to kind of accept wins and losses and then move forward from them. Because if you're stuck in your win, there's no progress, right? Like, because you just kind of stay in, oh yeah, I won at this thing, and life is continuing past you, things change,
right?
And you know,
I know for me, it's not that I struggled. It's not like, okay, yeah, I won at this, then let's move forward. It's meant like sometimes I operate like I didn't even win. Like if you're running a race and then you get to the finish line, I feel like I just need to keep running. Yeah. And like I struggle to like accept that I actually had win at something, or even if it's the podcast, like getting my first episode out. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I know I did my first episode, but I still got this. I still got stuff to pick up for. Yeah, that's something I know I struggled with. Yeah, I mean, we all have our struggles, but acceptance is probably one of the, like they say that, isn't that the last form of grief? Last stage of grief?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think that's...
Or it's one, yeah.
His last stage?
Yeah.
I think that's something that kind of we all have to get used to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was reading, honestly forgot the name of the books, but there is different things, like counseling, self-help books that I was reading. One of them is called Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Life, right? So that's, again, for the people that get caught up in self-analyzing, right? Analyzing too much, right? Because some self-analyzing, self-inventory is great. If you're doing it too much, then that's a problem. It's a hindrance to your life. Yeah. And so they talked about different therapy techniques or I don't know what to call them, right? Practices, techniques, whatever. So some of that, you know, they use terms like cognitive dissonance and acceptance being one of them. I forgot the model's name, but acceptance was one of the key things in there. And so it's always good to just accept, like, if you had a win, accept that. Because I remember people at work used to tell me that all the time, like, man, celebrate yourself. You know, it's, take time to enjoy, this win. Like, it's a win, And for me, it's just like,
I get you. I have, like, this one kind of practice I've kind of developed, where it's like every 4 months, like I do go through all my old yearbooks, all my like old photos and different things, just like feel all the emotions that I felt before, like all like accomplishments, like I have pictures and different things, like graduation pictures, kind of help me like accept like, hey, you're on the right path, or like that you've done stuff that you're proud of, or to appreciate some moments. Yeah. Because you never know when you have to go back to it. Right. Definitely. But definitely, thank you for coming along. Thank you for coming along to this podcast for sure.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
It's been 12 years, but I really do look up to you a lot. Like a lot of the things that kind of seeing you do, seeing how you operate, really impact me even more than I ever think. And I think for people, a lot of people, the mentors, the people that poured into them, the teachers, whatsoever, leave an impact with them. And that's why I like to call them the unsung heroes. Because, as I said, your maturity will never leave. Your maturity will leave more of an impact than you'll ever know. Yeah. But for sure, thank you for guys for watching this podcast. And for sure, you're invited to the discussion. But also, I want to hear your opinion. So in the comments, leave your comments. What do you think about the discussion? Do you think your maturity will leave an impact? Do you think procrastinators? Do you think there's benefits to it? Different things. Tell me what you think so far. But I'll see you guys in the comments. See you guys in the next one. But definitely, Gary, thank you for coming back.
Yeah, man. Bet. Appreciate you.
All right, guys.
All right, everybody. Thanks for having me.